We're here. We're live. We got the little banner that said on our side, you are live. Welcome to It's Your Business, hosted by the Bold Business Podcast. I got to tell you, these are some of my favorite things to do. And it's more than because of how awesome the people that come join me are. It's more than I get to learn something every single time I come. It's because you're here too. This is what we're doing. This is your go-to source for navigating today's ever-evolving business landscape. And guess what? With conversations like this, you get to add your voice. We get to normalize talking about easy things, hard things, unusual things, and most importantly, normalize talking about things we usually don't have the ability or capacity or connections to talk about within our own company. And that's incredibly important. I'm your host, Jess Duell, and on a program like this today, we're getting real. We're getting real about the challenges of owning, running, developing, exiting business. So let's lead with depth and understanding. And I am glad to be here having this conversation with two amazing people, Christy and Dean. How about if you introduce yourselves?
Sure. Christy Maxfield, Purpose First Advisors. We work with growth-oriented business owners to help them develop their succession and exit plan.
And Dean Barta at Barta Business Group. And we work with small businesses and nonprofits for bookkeeping, controller level, and CFO level services.
And at Red Direction, we're solving problems that you know you have, but didn't know you could find an answer to. So, guess what? I'm going to have to write that down. I've never said that before, guys.
That's new. I noticed that, and I was like, oh, she's been working on that.
Well, I am, because it's different every time, but business is different every time, as we are. And this is interesting because embracing the differences, right? The title of our show, The Hidden Costs of Growth and How to Avoid Them, was an interesting conversation that we had preparing for this. And we broke it down into three pieces. And the three pieces we are going to uncover and unfold and dig into today are the psyching up to be psyched out, the hard choices we actually really make and have to make in business, and when we can identify what's holding us back, we know what advice we're seeking out, we know what information might be helpful, and tools that we could use. So those are the three areas. And this topic is always important, but it's actually more important to me right now than a lot of other things. And you'll have to tell me how you both feel about this, because I just finished round one of 2025 planning. So I'm finishing up and wrapping up 2024, and I'm already way into the next 12 months in January. And to grow, we have to know exactly where we are and where we want to go. And one of those things is to really understand what could be holding us back and getting real about it. So that's my why of being here and wanting to talk about this. How about each of you?
How about you, Dean?
My why is, I innately just like helping people. And in the process, I learn more through the process. And I'm going through a similar, structure as what you just went through. Jess is planning for 2025, where I want to be, assessing, the pros and cons of what happened in 2024, since we're almost, we're in almost literally the 12th hour of the month or the year.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, but through these processes, I think it helps every business owner to if you share information, you're learning something in the process too.
Absolutely. And if I can encourage one person who has just spent a lot of time resisting the need to plan and get them to actually think about their growth with intention, I feel like it's worth it. Like, we have to have these conversations to normalize the fact that you can find lots of people who will tell you how they bypass, shortcut, or hack something. Mm-hmm. But I've never seen a hack or a shortcut actually result in the kind of intentional growth that builds not only income, but also value and wealth. And so, I'll talk all day, every day about, whatever it's going to take to get you to take the time out to actually plan. Because I think, Jess, you teed us up. The first thing is making the time to plan. So in some ways, the first hidden cost is it actually takes time. Like, you actually have to slow down before you speed up. You actually have to plan before you, and Jess, right? You are the shoot, aim. What is your acronym? Like you're not ready.
I have to plan. That's right. Yeah. So people would say, fire, aim, ready.
Fire, aim, ready.
Right. I think, or, yeah, fire, ready.
You still have to get
ready.
Even if you decide firing is the way to get the data you need, right?
Yeah.
You still have to go back to aim and ready to use that data, that experience, that iteration properly. So
time.
I'm here.
Thank you. I love that. And these three, this is really cool because I can't wait to see how this comes out in each of our topics, in each of our sections as we divide this up into 3 pieces. And, I want to start with this. We had some great feedback in our posts and promotion of this ahead of time. And when we can, we like to include as much of that as possible because, like I said at the beginning, the more we're all talking, the more normal it becomes. And so thank you. And here you go. So Peggy actually asked us, will you touch on localized market trends and how the local or national trends are affecting our business growth? And the answer is not today. However, Peggy.
Except to say they will impact your growth.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
stay tuned next week.
But here's why it's important. And I'm bringing this up because we all are going to analyze data, sift the data and look at it in whatever way we need. And so I think some tools will come out at the end that'll help us get the right information. And we wanted to make sure we're talking about the things that are impacting us day to day versus those higher things that then we take away and go like, so how do I use that? What do I do with this? Because those trends are only as good as the use. And we're going to say, you go get the trends you want. You go understand that stuff. You are mulling and chewing on those questions internally, and then making sure that you're doing it in such a way that you're setting yourself up for successful growth. And that's what we're talking about today. So I'm excited you're here, Peggy. I'm excited that you shared that. And you'll have to let us know if we give you the right tools that allow you to do that. What do you think about starting with psyching up to psych out, Christy?
Yeah. So when we had our prep call, and I'm always so grateful for Jess for teeing up the topics that we riff on in the background, and then she puts shape and form to it. But I also always go back to Jess's posts about it, and I'm like, what did she say we're talking about this time? Right. And so it's both the hidden costs, but also the challenges to growth. If you explored Jess's posts, and Dean and we also chimed in on what was going on. And what struck me is that whatever story we're telling ourselves is either creating a challenge to our growth or a breakthrough through our obstacles, or creating some type of hidden cost in that we can't necessarily quantify it on the P&L or the balance sheet, but the dialogue in our head is either psyching us up or psyching us out. And that has a real world consequence, because if I psych myself out perpetually, then I'm not going to grow, right? There's never going to be a perfect scenario. I'm never going to have enough resources. I'm not going to have enough time. I'm not going to be able to, right? So if I'm psyching myself out, a lot of times I see that with clients who are like, I'm really worried about my capacity. I'm like, okay, how many clients do you want to have? What does the scope of work need to look like, and for you to have an optimal load? If you wanted to grow and you didn't want to do all the work yourself, what would that look like? There is no easy answer to any of that, but you can really get into a spiral if you're like, if I go out and talk to people, they will all come to me at the exact same time and want a piece of me. And then I will be eaten alive by the growth I've created. Therefore, I am not going to talk to anyone and generate any new enthusiasm about my services because I couldn't deal. I'm like, really? No one ever, if they all come, call me, we will figure it out.
You know what? That's built into my business model.
We are the getting out of control, worrying about people coming and eating you
all at once. Oh yeah. Well, and if you think about it, so here would be my thing. My thing would be is I hear you, and I'm like, maybe I need to go back. Am I not growing the way that I could because I have this? So I want to call that out. Well, I actually did that, and I built a whole business model around it. And at the same point in time, my growth might be different than this other person's, and that's fine, right? So to call out that piece. So what does growth look like to you would be the first thing I would say. And the second thing would be is, what are you providing? And does the product or service really have the potential for that to occur? Because in my case, the answer is yes. Everybody would call me and want me to come to their office on the same day, and that's not possible. If everybody wanted something and they had some sort of deliverable schedule and it was something that they were expecting because it had already been communicated in a certain way, maybe it could be some of that, not all of it, but maybe not none of it. So risk it. Is that kind of where you were going?
That problem. Like if they all want me to come in Tuesday at 10, what am I going to do? Tell them you can't, and just alternative days and times would be my first triage.
I'm like, what are you doing that's so important that you couldn't reschedule them? That's my first question.
Manage expectations, like you said from the outset, Jess. When we hit capacity, we're going to have a month-long waiting list. And Dean, you're in accounting. You have seasons. You do have time where people are it's like there are deadlines that don't move. And they all need all their stuff. And if they don't, then they push it off to the next one. And that just creates its own little set of what I would think is your own personal.
So you mentioned, I mean, go play in traffic. I mean, that's a good problem to have, that you're so busy that you need to schedule things around.
Fair.
To me, that's great. That means you have a viable model and everything. That's, but that whole psyching up, I mean, you could psych yourself out like, okay, I'm going to wait till it's perfect before, and you got to go out and play in traffic, because guess what? You'll learn dodging cars and all that to not literally go out into traffic. It's so,
this is more like the Frogger video game.
Exactly. Fully developed, and that you're not going to take us literally. That's our caveat here.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Meaning, okay, I've got 3 clients that want to meet me on, the same time and all this. Guess what? That's a good problem to have. Let's, okay, now I could work on my coordination skills on, hey, how can I move people around and all that? And you're right, Christy, is that, our season can be more seasonal and all that. And I know now when to let off the accelerated pedal and when I've got to, go. And I prepare my team around that too. And they know as well. And knowing, and that's through some of the planning that you may do as well, is, because I don't think it's sustainable to be 110%, 365 days a year. Just not.
I don't even know.
That's the corporate world.
I have actually, even in corporate world, I never got past 100%.
Well, let's just say the expectations in corporate is the 110%.
It's true.
Yeah.
And okay. So I'm going to call that out because that differentiator is so important here when we psych ourselves out. Dean and Christy, you were touching on this too, where just because we think it doesn't make it real.
Well, right. And we've all probably had a corporate experience where someone put an unreasonable workload on us and basically said, figure it out. Right. And so we have a little bit of internalized memory about what that felt like and why we would never want to have that. And we also, if we own our businesses, we don't want to do that to other people. Right. So one of the dynamic tensions becomes, well, when do I know when to hire? I'm like, you only really have 2 choices. One is to take your current resources and stretch them to their ultimate max, hoping they don't break along the way, with the idea usually of, I will make as much money as possible, and I'll have more money in the bank, and there'll be more security, and then I can let the pressure off by bringing in this other person.
Mhm.
Or you can do that preemptively, knowing that you're not going to have them at 100% capacity to begin with, but that the investment in getting them onboarded before everybody is stressed out and losing their mind
Right.
is well worth the payoff of underutilizing them, so to speak, for
Yeah.
a period of time before you fully utilize their capabilities, right?
And I will tell you, in real life, you'll probably wait until it's too late the first time to hire somebody and learn from it.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like in my world, everybody was telling me before the birth of my first child, you don't really know what it is. And I had this whole big plan, and this child arrived, and the plan didn't matter. And so you have to learn as you go sometimes. And your example, I think, is a big part of that. And so I would add here is, hey, you can listen and you can learn, but until you get in it, you're really not in it. And I think that it's okay that it's not going to go the way that you think. And in fact, I would embrace the closer that it is.
Better.
What'd you say?
It might be even better than you thought.
That's
Right.
That's where I was
Right.
going. That's exactly right.
We never think that. We always think it will be worse.
Yeah.
We never think it could actually exceed our expectations.
Yeah.
And what I heard you say earlier, Jess, is like, I built into my business plan a way of managing everybody wanting me all at the same time.
And that's for every person in my business.
Whether that's I knew I had the capital to hire somebody if I needed, or I could outsource certain things if I needed.
Yeah.
And I remind people, like, if you're psyching yourself out because you're like, I can't do kid pickup and meal prep and take care of all these clients and you can outsource on your business side, and you can also outsource on your home side, right? So, like, do you need somebody to go and do the Instacart and pick up groceries on your way home, or have some prepared meals, or clean your house for you, or pick up the kids afterwards? Like, again, we require capital to grow.
And that's time and energy and money, right? I mean, let's call out the 3 forms of capital: time, energy, money.
Yeah.
And
but in this case, I'm saying, like, we need actual money
to
increase our capacity, either by hiring
or automating
or otherwise resourcing. But it doesn't always have to be in the silo of your business. I could increase my capacity by freeing up time from other areas of my life, if that's what I so choose. But yes, I mean, if my time is short and I have the money, I can use my money to increase my time, right? It becomes this trade-off, and it's not binary. It's not one or the other. And I would say managing expectations. I have had meetings with people where we're going in to talk to a client. They're like, I can't do one more thing today. And they sit across from the client and they say, I'll have a proposal to you by tomorrow afternoon. And I just want to turn to them and be like, did we not just have that conversation? Like, they didn't ask for it tomorrow afternoon, and you don't have any more capacity right now, and you just offered. Why? I'll have that to you in a week from today. Is that okay? I have almost never had anybody say to me, absolutely not. I need it in 48 business hours, or you might as well not even submit it. I mean, like, I can't even imagine a scenario where I've had that.
Well, now we're talking about what we feel like we have to do versus what the reality is of actually trying to have a conversation.
Up and out. Oh, if I don't get this to them right away, I won't get this business. If I don't overperform and overwork the scope, I won't keep this client.
Well, that is actually a part of hustle.
Yeah. Every hour, on the hour, and respond within 30 minutes of getting their email, the world's going to fall. Like,
I'll bet you Dean has an example from the wilderness world, because I have one as a student with a parent of a student athlete. I am learning that whatever profession we are in, there are similarities to what we must do in business. And so if we have a strength someplace else, a hobby or something like that, and we have trained and have discipline there, I think we could pull from that. Because what I was hearing you say was, And we're going to talk more about this, the hard choices. So I'm going to stop there, not say anything else yet, because we're not to the next part just yet, but I feel like we're getting a little close. Before we transition though, Dean, what else did you have on your mind about this?
Well, a couple things is, and just to touch upon what Christy's mentioned too, is what I've advised businesses is, and depending on your size and what your role is, of course, but is, hey, do what you love to do and what you're good at. Those things that energize you. We're talking about managing time and money and energies, and you outsource the stuff that is to people who love geeking out about that energizes them, and because that is how you can maintain, whether maybe you like grocery shopping for your kids, okay, and it's away from the opposite, okay,
right.
but be really honest with yourself about, hey, what provides energy with you with this business and what doesn't, and then have someone who does that, and I mean, and my only, hopefully make a small wilderness story, okay, is me climbing Devil's Tower. Now I'm ex search and rescue, wilderness first responder. So I'm climbing Devil's Tower, okay, and not been a huge rock climber, but I know enough, to stay safe. Went to rappel off. Scared, this close to an anxiety attack as I've ever considered, okay? And I mean, I actually thought about, we're going to have search and rescue take me off the top, which totally crushed my ego to a pulp, okay, if I had to do that. But guess what? It's kind of like hard business decisions. I had to move forward through it. But guess what? I tell people, how I saw Devil's Tower? 6 feet at a time. Is staying in the present, staying with the problem that's right there, not the 750 feet of open air below my feet, right, which is scary, but guess what? The unknown. That's the psych out portion of it. Yeah. And the psych in was like, guess what? I just had to focus, but guess what? I'm focusing on 6 feet at a time. And that's getting back to, hey, getting out and point. You got to get into the game and focus yourself right there. But that's my short story about that. So
I think that's really good, and it actually does set us up for transitioning into our second piece. So psyching up to psych out, and then the hard choices that we actually make. And here's a question that came in. Michael asked us this question: what advice do you have for someone starting a business when they have yet to start one? And we all kind of decided we think that question goes here, because it's a choice.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you've never started a business before, right, which guess what? Each one of us have been there before. And yeah, it's a very, it can be a very tough decision. And, pulling out of my skiing industry and Warren Miller is like, hey, if you don't do it now, you'll just be older than when you do decide to do it. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is, hey, if you've got family to feed and stuff like that, be judicious with your decision making, and reach out to people who have either done it or at least a business owner because the worst thing any person can do when they're first starting a business is try to do it themselves.
Just to make sure your head's on the way you want and you've got all the right questions. There's this person named Christy. There's this person named Dean. There's this person named moi, actually Jess, and
you call her moi Jess Duel.
But it's true. You bring up such a good point, and the hardest choice is to do it and then feel like you're all alone. And that's I would say the first 3 businesses that I started were like that, and the first 3 failed. It took the one I didn't do by myself to have success. And in fact, Christy mentioned this earlier. I almost didn't do that next one. And then when I did it, it was more successful than I had ever could have imagined. And so that would be what I would add to help answer Michael's question. Do
Well,
you have
the risk,
anything before we actually go into the hard choices and experiences?
the risk reward. So to grow or not to grow, right? We're talking about you've already overcome the startup phase. You made it through the first valley of death. You went out there, some people bought what you were selling, and now you're like, I would like more of this. And ideally I would like more of this in a better version of it, right? Like smoother operations, more streamlined, less whatever, right? Less brute force to get the same outcome. So you end up reaching out either at the beginning where you're first starting out, or when you get to this inflection point and you reach out to someone like us, right? And you find a good partner who can help you weigh not the pros and the cons so much, but like what do you want your risk portfolio to look like? So I have never climbed a mountain, and I am not going to have anywhere near 700 feet of open air under me ever. But if I did consider doing this, right, I would get the best trainers. I would learn the best techniques. I would practice. And then I would find ways to de-risk it, right? I tether myself. I know just enough about the land. Like I personally would use the harness and the rope and the climbing buddy and and I'd let people know where I was going, and I'd make sure if things went south, somebody knew to call somebody to come rescue my butt, right? Like I would try to practice the best practices for the endeavor and create a situation where I was putting myself at the least amount of risk. Yeah. So if you're thinking about starting a business, even at that juncture where it feels super, super risky, like I ran my numbers. I knew what my runway was. I knew I could go 7.5 months without pay on my first business. And then my psychological, unconscious part of my brain hoarded canned vegetables. If you opened my closet in 2010 when I was doing my first startup, I think some level of my brain thought, well, if you have canned peas, at least, you'll have canned pea seeds, because we had an inordinate amount of them, right? So like now if I was going to say, wow, I'm going to sink another $100,000 into building my business because I think that the next growth plateau is going to pay off these dividends, I would find ways to de-risk that to the point where I felt comfortable enough to take those next steps.
And we all have choices. And I know, Dean, you've been thinking about this, and you come with a lot of, I don't know, your stories rival mine sometimes. And I'm like, holy cow. So how about if you start us off on the hard choices that we make, and maybe how how those choices actually can be hidden costs, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've had plenty of hard choices, but I would say probably one of the more challenging one that I've had is I was in a partnership with a very close friend of mine, like close friend, like best man at my wedding, close friend. And, also had done a bunch of outdoor activities, you bring people, your life depends on it, kind of situations. But the partnership was just not working out. It just wasn't, and I had to make a decision that, hey, I've got to split up the partnership, and, there's other things that are going to go by the wayside because of that, and take a big risk on, my own skill set. So it was a calculated risk, but as you're talking about, Christy, is like, hey, you got to look at, do I have enough peas in the cupboard? I'm going to use that one in the future. But I had enough, experience in this industry where I said, hey, it's because it's not working out on multiple levels. This partnership wasn't working out, and took that risk. And yeah, those first 6 months, it's certainly lean, and there's that friendship and all that went by the wayside as well. But I'm a much better for going through that decision, on many levels. So, And I think, you touched upon a little bit too, Christy, is that, part of being, in being a business owner, I think for me is the personal growth aspect of it. I feel like I've grown a lot more being, where the buck stops here than I did, middle management in corporate and things like that. So, yeah, it's those hard choices, you have to weigh all of these, but, and just one other thing I'll bring up is, yeah, when I did rappel off the Devil's Tower, guess what? Even though I'm like literally shaking, but guess what? I was checking the safety of the rope, my harness, belay device, all of that before I stepped off. I just didn't say, well, everything's going to be okay. So there is, checking those safety features. So I guess that's my can of peas, but
I think that's great.
We can.
Yeah. And we've jumped into Kimberly's question for us that she was asking specifically about growth challenges that we have encountered in our journey. And, Dean, you were just sharing one. Do you have one, Christy?
I was thinking about that, and just in terms of needing to decide, as I think Dean mentioned earlier, what does growth look like for you? And then do you want that? Because at certain points in your entrepreneurial journey, you may, having $1 million business and 3 employees and whatever the case may be, having a $50 million business and 40 employees may sound really, really appealing. And then when you start to navigate the pathway there, you may change your mind about what those things are. So I think however your growth challenges show up, they're probably going to run in some common themes. Mm-hmm. And as we said before, finding other people who have walked that path and had to negotiate those same things and make some of those same choices, whether it's about when to add staff, how to raise capital, how to finance your growth, where to invest in order to be growth ready. Because if you've got a suboptimal system and you try to put more through it, you're going to get suboptimal results. So, and I know that's not as specific as breaking up with your business partner, but if I look at some of the experiences when I did my first startup, the founder laid a lot of groundwork before he brought me in as a number 2, and I blew up a lot of his stuff in the first 6 months. And in blowing it up, we had to have a plan B. Mm. So I think the challenges are actually taking the action needs to be done, even when it scares the bejesus. I mean, like, Dean could be on the mountain today, hanging out, waiting for somebody to come get him. Or he would figure out how to get down it.
Well, you're right. One of the examples that I know I started a company with somebody. We had different skill sets. I was going to be the sales side. They were going to be the delivery side. We get together. We both pool our money. We do all of the branding stuff. We get it started. We launch. We take on our first couple of clients. And she disappears with all the cash in our bank account.
Oh, girl.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know this, Christy? Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, and so here I have clients and I have no money, but
and she's also the person delivering the service that you went out and told.
Yeah. And I just got the money. I didn't know I wasn't involved in the delivery of the product at the end. So guess
Wow.
Right? Apparently this is a lesson I have to learn somehow, because that was actually one where I actually did trades with other people. I found somebody who could do the work, and I gave them a trade of my time within their organization so that they could benefit from the cost that I needed to repay somebody. So I took responsibility. I served the customers to the best of my ability on both sides without having to exchange any money or taking on any debt. I just put in my effort and my time and my integrity. of that one.
Yeah,
Um,
that's amazing. So,
so
reflecting then, Garrett, there too is when I was doing that startup with a
yeah,
founder, another founder was to we were building an administrative services company for nonprofits, and we were going to offer accounting and insurance and all these things. And I wasn't an accountant, and I didn't have an insurance license, right? But I'm out there growing the business and selling these things. And the first rule was don't make Christy a liar, right? Yeah. So the challenge was, as a non-technical founder, as a not this and a not that and a not this and a not that, how do you assemble the team that can deliver on the promises you're out making?
Yeah.
I knew what the problem was. I knew who the client was. I knew what a solution was, and I could sell it.
Yeah.
I had a delivery challenge I had to solve.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of iterations, but thankfully nobody absconded with the money. So,
yeah. Well, I was not looking to one up anybody. I was just like, I got a lot of them, but I figured I'd start with that because it was a startup and it was well, what you do. And when you put trust in somebody, it doesn't matter if you know them well, like where Dean was at and you part ways, or you don't know them very well. It can still take a turn in an unexpected way. And it's a challenge, especially when there's a value change or some sort of trust issue that develops somewhere in there. And the sooner we can get there, the better. I can tell you another big one. The cost of hidden growth that I see the most is in client diversification. Mm-hmm. One of the things that is, and this has happened to us before too, in many different ways, not at Red Direction, but in all of my other companies that have had any level of success, we have dealt with this. And that is that one or two clients make up the majority of the income, and you build a structure around that. And then one of them goes away and they don't know why. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why. And I know I've had clients and worked in companies where biggest client just showed up out of nowhere because they didn't feel like they were listened to, asked for an on-site meeting and fired us. Somebody got acquired, and all of a sudden, all of our part that we were delivering on all of this stuff just dried up and nobody told us. And so what do? Right? So in either of those cases, when that diversity is there, that is actually a hidden cost. We relish in it. It feels good. It might be like what we've known before. So there's a little bit of comfort in that. Oh, we're our own business, but we're kind of employed because this one person or two people, and by people, I mean companies, are bringing us all of this work. And that is a scary place to be. And that is a hidden cost of growth, because not only do we get to stagnation into do I really want to? Because it's comfortable here, which is a real thing. But the other flip side of that is, well, what happens when they go? What happens when their situation changes? And then what happens to us? And do we understand what we're going to do? And how fast can we respond? Because the response isn't do whatever it takes to keep the business, because that's actually also a hidden cost that I have seen in practice. Also been guilty of discounting prices so much to keep it, right? Okay. We've all been there at one point, and it usually happens with that top tier client. One or two, right? Go.
I call it the Walmart client effect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's say the little cottage there, they build birdhouses or something like that. And they're like, hey, we got a contract with Walmart. And they're like, birdhouses, all of a sudden Walmart starts squeezing them on prices. And absolutely. My equation and what we use too is like, you should not have one client that has more than 25% of your business, because that's red flag. Because they can, whatever, there's various reasons why they can go away. And probably 99% of them are out of your control. And it's managing, that challenge. And I think one of the things about growth challenge too, we specifically address this with our business owners, is I think one of the best things they can to create that more ideal vision is have an exit strategy. To me, because it changes the mindset of most business owners, that if they know, I only have 5 years or 10 year or whatever. And that's a great way. That's one of the best planning things that they can do is,
Right.
hey, because guess what? You're not going to live forever. And figure out how you want this exit strategy to look like. Then, and actually, this is a guy, George Gillette, who used to actually own Vail, part of Vail Resorts back in the day. It's one of the bits of advice he told me is like, start from the end and work your way back.
Yes.
100%. 100%.
And in that, you can then manage, and at least you have a better picture. Okay, we're going to have ups and downs, peaks, valleys, all that kind of stuff. But this is the ultimate goal, is by whatever year 10 or whatever it might be, this is what our plan is. And then it's all micro adjustments, and, but that is because you're going to, it's part of business. You have growth challenges and all that. But if you know what the kind of the end game is, that to me has alleviated a lot more people's fears than gets credit for, honestly. Because people are like, oh, I'm going to start a business, and will ask them even in year 1, what's your exit strategy? And they're like, well, you just started it. And I go, exactly.
Yes.
And especially with partnerships. I mean, we have 2 stories here between Jess and me, I can go in about how partnerships are the worst ship you can be in, but,
Exactly.
But anyway, that's my, bit of advice. So.
And I think that speaks to the point, Dean, of having to make hard choices. Like, you literally have to make choices. That you can't leave everything open-ended. You can't actually do 5 things at the same time. You probably have to pick one, right? And you have to make choices about who and how. So if I'm going to prepare for growth and I'm going to say I want to increase my revenue and my profit, then I need to have strategies that allow me to do both those things. And so one of the things I might do is say, well, I can increase my profit by not hiring anybody else and just doing the work myself. Well, now I've created a greater dependency of the business on me, which actually reduces its potential future value.
Right.
Because all that money I saved, all that profit I pocketed was actually inflated because I didn't reinvest in the business. So it's not actually there. It's not sustainable. And if I don't invest in more people and more talent and more systems, I can't sustain the growth that I'm going to achieve. And if I do it by do that, and at the same time concentrate my clients into a small number that I'm highly dependent on, I've further devalued my business, right? So you could be like, I've got $2 million in revenue, and I got a 15 to 20% profit margin. And if I leave the business, it will collapse. Nobody buys that business.
That's right.
I don't care how good the cash flow is. I don't care how much the year-over-year growth is. If you built it and grew it without properly investing in it and diversifying it and making it transferable, it was
that's why
a short-term gain.
That's why we're here. We're talking about the hidden cost of business growth. You're listening to It's Your Business, brought to you by the Bold Business Podcast. Don't forget, we're talking in depth about things that matter today to lead well with intention, and most importantly, talk about it so we can normalize as much success as we can, as well as getting the help we need when we encounter the challenges along the way. I'm your host, Jess Duell with Red Direction.
Christy Maxfield with Perfect First Advisors.
Dean Barta at Barta Business Group.
And let me tell you, we are 2/3 of the way through here. Isn't this amazing? Right? I know time goes by fast here. And so this is where we want to bring it home. So we've shared the mindset piece, psych up to psych out. We've shared personal experiences and learnings that we've had directly and that we have helped our clients go through. And now we are ready to talk about ways that we can take this information and make it really practical. And so that's an important piece of where we're at right now. One of the things I was thinking about for this was, well, what tools do I use? What tools do I use in my planning? What tools have become so important to me with all of my stellar and spectacular failures and my amazing and awesome successes to that I actually work with clients and use? And I would say there are two ways. The thing that I use the most, which it's really the unsexiest thing you could ever want to do in business, which is a SWOT: strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And I think I said them in the wrong order. They don't spell SWOT, but that's okay. You know, that's the thing. Welcome to my world. And here's why. Here's why I love it. I love it. What you said?
You do TOWS, TOWS.
Great. That's exactly right. And
just like you fire, aim, and ready.
Exactly. Who says it has to go in a certain order? Only the people who made it. What you talking about? Call me if you want to break a rule.
I'm just saying, we could have been talking about TOWS for generations instead of SWOT. Just one different person being in the mix. Anyway, I'll stop.
I know, right? And it's a dynamic tool though, and people don't really resonate with its depth because we've been talking about all kinds of things, and some of our plans and our goals might be written down. But when we really identify not only our own, which by the way I think is important when we are on a path of accelerating our own journey to different places, or when we're the torch bearer and we still need to know our own strengths and weaknesses. And then what are our organization's strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats? And the one that matters most in terms of how to make all of what we're talking about practical, swinging all the way back to Peggy, whatever stats and whatever information you get, that's going to be your strengths, your opportunities and your threats. How does your company respond to those? And I use mine every quarter, by the way. And that's why I call it dynamic. Our SWOTs for myself, as well as for Red Direction, come out every single quarter when I am planning. And they spend a little more time on my desk for annual planning. And it's because I want to know, what challenges did I face, and did I mitigate any of my weaknesses or reduce any of my threats from the outside? I want to know, well, what are the things that I want to do? Where do I want to take Red Direction? Can we do it with what we have now? Or do I have to get something else in place? It is one of the coolest, quickest tools to ask questions about where do we want to go and what do we already have to get there. And so I'm a big fan of that in and of itself. And people are like, why do I have to do this with you? I said, oh, trust me. And every single one of my clients for the last 20 years, after doing this, working with me, several years, our clients are with us about average of 8 years. They can't live without it. And they might be like, oh, right, we have this thing. But every once in a while, I'll forget. And they'll be like, hey, we're missing something in our strategic sessions. Sure enough, it's the SWOT. So that's what I was doing
yesterday. So I happened to join the accelerator this year because I also believe coaches need coaches, professional providers need other professional providers. So I try to drink my own Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Vern Harnish, who founded EO and who has written books on scaling, has come up with SWET, SWT.
Okay.
Strengths, weaknesses, and trends. And the variation on weaknesses in this one is that they're things you can't change. So they're not things you would try and improve upon. They're like the truths of your industry, whatever that might be. Like, these are the regulations in our industry, whatever other constraints that are not actually, because that helps you identify what not to focus on, because I can't change them. But then in knowing that, does that create any other opportunities? And in analyzing trends, then I can understand what, because there's no opportunities in this version, the SWT version, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, by understanding your trends, you can understand if there are embedded opportunities with them.
So you're not looking at ways you might be becoming obsolete. You're only looking at ways and disruption that might be coming.
Well, I don't know if you're not looking at how you become obsolete, but what you're really looking for is where do I want to put my energy versus not even invest any time or energy versus is there untapped potential that I haven't yet recognized?
Okay, because see, that's where my threat piece comes in, because I'm like, oh, I've had companies that like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not for us.
Well, and that's
the time to exit so that the next person can.
In a traditional SWOT, that's where you would find your pestle analysis, right?
Yeah.
That's where you would look at the political, the social, the environmental, all those, the legislative, and those are typically things that are creating macro and micro trends within your environment, right? If new technology is being introduced to me, like AI, right? Like it's not only a trend, but it has fundamental implications on how certain businesses will grow and prosper in the future, and it's unlocking new opportunities for people to figure out new business models, right? So I could look at it as an opportunity, I could look at it as a threat, I could look at it as a trend. What does the different lens of looking at it?
Oh, yeah.
Which questions does it prompt me to ask? Because that's what I took from what you said, Jess, was this tool helps me ask better questions.
Yeah. Ask, and so does it align with my goals? Is it aligned with where I want to be in 5 and 10 years? Because I'm looking at that as I ask all my clients to. What are the things that I had no idea? Yeah, and yours does too, that I had no idea I ought to be thinking about, and do I want to be? Those, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ask better questions. That's awesome. How about you, Dean?
I don't know. The information you both are talking about is, I'm taking it all in myself.
It's hard. That's what happens.
That's why it's so much fun to be with you, because you guys are just like, your stuff so well. But I honestly, I can't say that I have anything to add to that. Other, I mean, my stuff is more nuts and bolts stuff. So I look at, when you look at tools, is take a look at, I look at it like turnover. If you got a position you're going to find out why that keeps happening. And a lot of times, in my experience with the clients I work with, it's processes, the systems, or something that they're not automating enough. I mean, good golly, to have someone inputting stuff into a spreadsheet, or like, oh yeah, well, why don't you just go back to 1985, because that's what you just did, and you can be Back to the Future, okay? It's like you can get into the time machine and the DeLorean and do all that, but if you want to keep employees around, you got to get some feedback from them, because what we have learned, at least what I've learned from Undercover Boss, guess what? They go and find out who the employees working with the frontline customers, because they're going to give them the best feedback, because they've become too insulated from what's going on a day-to-day basis. So, kind of, it's, in a way, it's a bit go back to basics. If when in doubt, go back to, ask your frontline employees. They could tell you, the real deal on what's going on.
I love that, Dean. And that actually reminded me, we had one more request and question. What are the tools and advice that you have? And we've each shared one. I
would leverage Dean. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like what Dean does by giving you a finger on the pulse of your financial narrative, helping you look at your numbers from different ways, helping you make meaning. Because like a balance sheet and income statement mean nothing if you can't tell the story behind the numbers, right?
Right.
And if you did nothing else, if you read no other book and grabbed no other tool, if you just took out your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow, and you said, what is the story that my business told me over the last 12 months? Do I like the story? Is it a good story? Am I liking where it's going? Like, I'm watching the plot line. Do I like this plot line? Or is this plot line heading to places I don't want it to go? And what control do I have over that? Like, where do I need to probe further? Because then you can grab Jess's tool, you can get the sweat, and you can do visioning, and you can create a new sales plan and revamp your marketing. But like, the numbers can help you also ask really important, why is that number higher? Why is that number lower? What's in that number?
So Christy,
reclassified how she managed some of her expenses over the years. So now she has a clearer view of what's really related to a certain expense. But when she does a year-to-year comparison, she has to remember to tell the narrative of why this number why it looks so different. Right?
Yeah. Are we, and what I hear you saying, tell me if I'm off base here, Christy, is that we don't need all the data. We need the right data.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't need to necessarily dig in on my mileage cost if I'm not really doing a whole lot of mileage, right? But I've spent a lot more on professional development and what I would consider lead generation, marketing, things that I am doing specifically because I think of their business development potential, right? And I've got to look at those and see what kind of outcomes I get from those investments, and not just say, oh my God, I increased expenses by 20% this year, I need to cut and slash and burn. No, did 20% yield 30% on the bottom line? I mean, in which case I'm going to keep spending some of that money, because if not all of that money, because it had the desired end result. But I find people are intimidated by their numbers. They don't really want to see them. They're afraid that what they're going to see or not see, they're afraid about what they will understand or not understand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can kind of put that aside and say, it's data, it's information, and I get to understand what it means and how I might want it to look differently in the future. So, like, I think what Dean does, the reason his company exists, is to put more resources and tools at your disposal to help you overcome some of your biggest growth challenges.
Right, because your financial statement, you touched upon it. The big three is statement of cash flows, balance sheet, and income statement. That's your scorecard. I mean, and guess what? Just like your favorite sports team, you got to live with the win-loss record. And I like what you said, Christy, too, is that to me, everything is where's the return on investment? That's employees, that's equipment, that's marketing, whatever it might be. And you have to be really honest to say, that just didn't pay off. We got to get something that works better, for us. But all of that syncs up with your personal goals, your business goals, and all that, because maybe that marketing that had a good ROI, but gosh, your team is exhausted,
Exactly.
And so you gotta that's why it's
maybe
more
that new hire hit all of his sales goals, but he's a real jerk and he brought down morale, right? Or maybe the person you love working with doesn't actually produce the results you need.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that kind of brings us back to those hard decisions. Like if the challenge to your growth is that the people you have are no longer the people you need, and you're unwilling to make those changes, that's both a mindset thing, a decision-making, an executive decision-making thing, and hard choices decision. And there's no amount of tools that will get you out of that, right? Like then it's just, am I willing to deal with reality?
I view it, when it comes to senior people, whether it's the owner of the company or the president or whatever, is I see two roles, okay? Two one-line descriptions is push forward the vision of the company, and the other is protect the assets of the company. That means people, equipment, all that. Those two things, because that's what provides, in a way, security, because your team has to know that they're going to have a job, or, because people work better when they have a sense of security. Like, hey, payroll is going to be, and my paycheck's going to be there, right? To me, that I just boil it down to that. And, that's what every, top manager or owner should be really looking at.
What are our biggest takeaways from today? I know, right? Now what? Now we have to
I'd say we've lived a lot of life, and we've made a lot of we've had a lot of challenges.
I was going to say, we're pretty cool, and you might want to schedule some time with us, because who knows what we might unlock for you.
And we obviously don't have any fun at all with what we're doing. So
none. We care very little about what we do and who we do it for.
Yeah, I get that.
The big takeaways. Keep probing in terms of why you want to grow, how you want to grow, and what will make that growth as successful and sustainable as possible. And so whether that's you need a new tool set to help you do it, you need other people, human intellectual capital to help you do that. One of the quotes I shared in our social media posts was Dr. Henry Cloud was like, the single thing that's blocking people's growth is to realize they need resources that are not personally housed in their person, right? Like you need a lot of what's personally in your person, but you also need to tap the experts and the professionals who can help you do this, who can really unlock your potential. So if you're really struggling with growth, it's time to kind of step back and be like, who's not on my team who needs to be there, who can help me through this?
Yeah, that's a little bit like my biggest takeaway, which was, there are a lot of stories we can tell ourselves to get in our own way, whether it's our advice or our tools or our examples that can help you get there. See if you can find at least one of your own stories, because my takeaway is that we get to design the action we take next.
100%.
That, I think, is a huge piece of, cool, there's going to be hidden costs. Cool, there's going to be challenges. Yeah, we're going to run into some crazy stuff. And guess what? By design, by the actions we take, we get to do it. And we get to work toward our goal and that particular journey with intention. And I think that that's a big thing, to just keep taking that next step one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Very important.
And guess what, everybody? That's it. We're here. We've been on an hour. And you know what else? It's Your Business, the hidden cost of business growth. Until next time.